Oh, this one is for the birds. Hello everyone, I'm Father Aaron. Welcome to The Dungeon Minister! And the continuing adventures of the heroes of Honeywood. I realize I actually have not sort of introduced these heroes in a while, so people who are new to the channel might not exactly know who we're talking about. Just to quickly introduce who the characters are. We have the Fab Four, the heroes of Honeywood. They are Fleetwood and Bob Johnny, elves. There is Fofire, the thief, and Touchberry, the halfling. The elves are both 5th level, the thief is 7th, and the halfling is 6th level, just to give you a rough idea where they are. As far as the characters of these 4 characters, Fleetwood, inquisitive, cautious, the leader of the group, the sort of de facto leader of the group. Bob Johnny, pure and noble of spirit and heart. Fofire, played by my wife, who really is just knits most of the time and adds her impressions where they happen. She's playing for the sake of the boys more than anything. And Touchberry, otherwise known as Torchberry, the arsonist halfling. Yeah, you'll get to know him, and generally love him. Anyhow, these heroes have recently solved the mystery of the missing man, or, well, come to its bloody conclusion, discovering that Gloman, thought to be a trusted member of the Count's inner circle, was actually a traitor who betrayed the Count for money. He was supposed to bring a large portion of treasure to Lord Morgan Mar, one of the Count's vassals, and a staunch supporter of the Count, in order to help Lord Morgan raise an army to assist the Count in retaking his own county, which has been taken from him by the Baron of Comoik, in alliance with Bargle the Wizard. Yes, that Bargle. And the Baron's son, the Baronet, why not, the Baronet Gorak. All right, now that we're caught up, or roughly so, where are the heroes? They have left Fenwood and have crossed through the forest on their way to Akhegmar, which is the stronghold of Lord Morgan. They have recovered the treasure, most of it. Gloman did spend a little bit here and there, but most of the treasure, and they are going to deliver it. They're going to finish the mission which Gloman was supposed to have accomplished. They're going to finish it and bring Gloman to justice. So they have a prisoner with them as they leave the forest on foot. They come out into the plains. I'm rolling dice for random encounters. Nothing's coming up. They are fortunate. They emerge into the plains, and they have to make camp. Night falls, and they're making camp. Of course, a fire out on the grasslands is going to attract attention. It can be seen forever, right? And so what happens in the middle of the night? I roll up a random encounter, and sure enough, something is coming. Now, I have decided that anywhere out here, there is a 50-50 chance that the encounter ends up being Lord Morgan Mar's own troops, right? Because he maintains a household cavalry. His job is to keep an eye on this area, to keep any invasions from the east from entering, because there's a whole orc horde off to the east. So his job is to protect the gap between the elves to the north and the mountains to the south. So he's watching the area. So there's a 50% chance that anything that comes along is his cavalry, and I roll it up, and indeed, it is horsemen from Akhegmar. Out of the night, they hear the thunder of hoofs before they can see, even with the elves in provision, before they can see at a distance, long before they hear the approach. And they're all ready. They're all in battle posture, when into the firelight comes the horsemen of Akhegmar, one of the household cavalry troops that patrols, a dozen or so horsemen. They see 2 elves and a human and a halfling, and okay, who are you? Well, and I guess 2 humans, because he's a prisoner. Who are you? They identify themselves, and the horsemen in turn identify themselves. This troop is being led by Donkhad, which is one of Morgan's sons. And he doesn't tell them that at the moment. He just identifies that they're from Akhigmar. Very well. Donkhad orders 4 of his troops to dismount, and they give their horses to the party. And they're going to stay in camp here, and more horses will be sent out, later the next day to bring these folks back. Those 4 are going to camp here. The party mounts up. Touchberry rides along with Foefire because a halfling on a horse isn't going to work. And they throw Gloman like a sack of potatoes over one of the horses, and they ride away. They ride all through the night, and as dawn begins to show in the east, they can see silhouetted against the horizon a lone tower. This is the Tower Keep of Akhigmar. It stands in isolation, just a few little farming huts around it, not very big at all. There is a village associated with this Tower Keep, but it's a ways away. So it stands largely alone. And they approach it as the sun rises behind it, and they enter the small bailey which surrounds it, enclosed by a wooden palisade. And there they are greeted by the household of Lord Morgan, including Morgan himself and his wife Agnes. Now, Lord Morgan is a 7th level fighter. He had been an adventurer in his own day, and he is married to Agnes, who is an 8th level cleric. They have children. They have Duncan. Duncan is essentially what it is. It's Donkhad. I have to look at the names. Why I ever decided everything should be in Scots Gaelic, I don't know. It's just a punishment to me, really. Mael Colum and Orabilis. All right, Orabilis is the daughter. She and Donkhad are riders in the household cavalry, and Mael Colum is studying to be a cleric under his mother. Anyhow, they are greeted. Gloman is taken off of his horse and hauled off to the Undercroft. The tower construction, like most of the defensive buildings in my world, the entrance is 1 story up, what we'd call the 2nd floor and the British would call the 1st floor. And it's reached by a wooden staircase on the exterior, which can be thrown down, dismantled, burned, whatever, in case of attack. Anyway, he's taken up there and then into the Undercroft, the bottom part, the dungeon, there to await a trial. As a side note, his trial will happen while the heroes are at the keep, because they need their witness. Morgan hears everything, hears the evidence, and sends word off to Cormac. How does he send word to Cormac? You may remember that when Elred was pulled from the river, his body was pulled from the river, they found on him, the soldiers of Gorak found on him a small whistle. That whistle calls a sparrow, and that sparrow then acts as messenger, and they fly. Now, the reality is sparrows probably wouldn't fly that far. They probably couldn't fly that far. But you know what? The reality is also that you couldn't get a sparrow to carry a message one way or the other, so come on. At any rate, that explains the small note that the heroes found that Elred and his men had left. Nothing yet, searching west. That was their note that they were going to send to Cormac to let him know how they were progressing. But they never got around to sending it because, Gloman betrayed them. Anyway, Morgan sends word to Cormac. Cormac sends word back. It takes a couple of days because it's a small bird. It's a long way. It does take a couple of days, but word comes back and Gloman is hanged. Hanged in the courtyard. That's the rough justice of a medieval setting, right? You're not going to try to rehabilitate him. You're not putting him in prison for life. You don't have that kind of money. You don't have that kind of space. He's hanged. So that was an interesting moment because it was a sort of, this is what, your actions led to something. It led to his capture and arrest and everything. And this is the consequence, right? So there's consequences in the world. Things happen. They don't like killing prisoners. Once a prisoner surrenders, they really don't like to put them to death. So this was an interesting thing for them to wrap their heads around. Anyway, this happens. Also, while they are there, well, for one thing, while they are there, Touchberry eats more chickens than is really decent for any living creature to consume. But, he makes full use of the hospitality of Akhigmar. Also, while he's there, though, while they're there, specifically Touchberry, though, notices he notices that Agnes greets two friends of hers. They are also clerics, two other women. And he happens to be outside when they gather in the courtyard and begin talking. And he says, well, I'm just going to see what they're doing. For some reason, he finds it suspicious. He finds it suspicious because the DM is talking about it, right? In a role-playing game, everything your characters see has to be spoken to you by the DM. So unless I'm going to say everything, and then the blacksmith shows up to reshoe a couple of horses, and then the grain merchant shows up with some grain so that the castle has some bread to, blah, blah, blah. Every detail of life, the things you mention obviously stand out. Anyway, he sees this happen, and he decides he's going to follow because they leave the confines of the Bailey and go off onto the grasslands. He doesn't follow there, but he goes up onto the palisade wall and just pretends like he's just enjoying the view as he keeps an eye on them. They gather, and it is near sunset. They begin a strange ritual, a sort of dance in a circle around a small fire, and they begin to sing. The song they sing is the Magpie. Now, I can't play that song for copyright reasons. I played it at the table, though, and you can find a link to it down below. It begins, 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl, and 4 for a boy. It's based on old folklore that the magpie could predict the future, right? And this is what the women are doing. They are devotees of Saint Mag. Saint Mag, who was a saint in the faith, the Way, which is the dominant faith in the kingdom, but she was also sometimes seen as a witch. She's a slightly ambivalent figure, and she would speak to the birds, to the animals. She sort of occupies a St. Francis type of position here, and these three clerics of the Way, they're good and loyal clerics, but they do practice some of these old ways, and they are calling these birds to give them a prediction for the future. The women then come into the keep and spend the night, and Touchberry, not looking at anything, right? Now, his suspicions are allayed by one of the lines of the song, which is, "Devil, devil, we defy thee." Okay, maybe they're not bad after all, and they're not. They're actually quite good. The next day, the women spend most of their day on the palisade watching the skies. And Touchberry keeps an eye on them, and he lets the others know what's been going on. And sure enough, late in the morning, one of the women signals to the others, and they gather, as a single bird flies out of the sky and lands on the ground in the midst of their small circle. 1 for sorrow. Touchberry watches as they feed the bird. And after gobbling down the food it's given, this magpie begins a strange dance, punctuated by squawking and song. And it does this little dance as the women watch, and then bobs its head. They feed it again, it gobbles that down and flies away. 1 for sorrow. The women come into the Tower Keep, and they go to Lord Morgan. Now, this is a small keep. This is not a big building. So things happening in one part of the hall can be heard in the other part of the hall, and really they make no attempt to hide it. They know that they're among friends. There is a warning from the magpie. 1 for sorrow, but then the magpie is able to give them some more information. Now, it can't give exact details. It's a bird. But it can communicate some things, and what it has communicated is that there is an enemy approaching from the mountains, from the forest. There is an enemy coming. Did the bird give any indication how large a force? It is not a vast army. It is not huge, but it is a serious threat. The bird can communicate that much, right? All right. Lord Morgan is too busy with the preparations for going to war, assembling the army, which that treasure has allowed him to do, right? To acquire weapons and to pay soldiers and everything else. He's too busy with those preparations, getting ready to march west to the assistance of Lord Cormac up at the keep on the Northern Sea, to join forces with him and to drive Gorak out of the forest and eventually to retake to retake Kilmarnock. So he's too busy with that, as are Don Cad and Mael Colum and Arabilis. They're all too busy with those preparations. They all have roles in the household, forces. Agnes, though. Agnes can go and investigate. And if this turns out to be a serious threat, then Morgan will delay his departure to deal with this threat first, and then join the Count. All right, Agnes will go. And they turn to the heroes of Honeywood. Will the four of you accompany her? Yes! We'll go. I mean, of course they're going to go, right? It's adventure, and it's clearly what the DM has prepared for the... Yeah. Anyway, the next day they set out toward the mountains, toward the forest, which is a sort of haze on the horizon. They reach that forest, and into it they plunge. Nothing assails them across the grasslands, but very shortly after entering the forest, as I roll, oh, sure enough, random encounter. What do they find? They find, in a deep hollow in the forest, a nest of black widow spiders. The trees are thick with their webs, and they can see a couple of them scuttling up ahead. Oh, we're going to go around this. They want nothing to do with it. They just want to skirt this. This is not the threat. This is just a naturally occurring giant spider monster. So they're going to go around it and keep searching. But as they go around, one of the spiders clocks them and comes scuttling through the forest toward them. And just then, Bob Johnny remembers his ring of animal control and sends it away. Whew. All right. Let's keep going. Let's get some distance. Even though it is now getting late in the day and the night is approaching, let's keep going. We want to be far away from them before night sets, right? So off they go into the forest, and they do find a place to camp, and they settle in. Now, as they make camp, they are nearing the mountains. They're getting close to the foothills, and so the chance of a random encounter is pretty high, and I roll. The dice are favoring them. No encounter tonight. The next morning, they memorize spells. It's the general combat association of spells, like magic missiles and sleep and web and lightning bolt, of course, right? They memorize those, and off they go. It isn't long before they discover, perched on a hill, an old ruined tower that probably at one point commanded quite a view when the forest would have been cut back around it so they could see. But here it stands now. It looks like it may just be a shell, nothing there. We should check it out. This might be where the threat is. Faux fire. Can you climb up and look? Now, as I said, with any building in my world, the entrances aren't on the ground floor, they're one floor up, right? There would have been an old wooden staircase or ladder or something, long since rotted away. Now, no problem. In Beckme, thieves can climb a wall, no problem. So she makes the roll. Easy. Scoots up the wall with no effort at all, and she perches herself in that doorway. And from there, she calls down. This thing is just a shell. There's no interior left on it. There's trees and bushes and grass growing inside the tower. But as she's perched there, out of that foliage comes darting 4 shapes, flying at her with sharp, proboscis sturges. They attack, and 2 of them hit, and they attach themselves to her and begin drawing blood. She gets her sword out and lashes back. She does clip one of them, doesn't kill it, but wounds it, and she calls down, "Help!" Fleetwood casts magic missile and sends 3 missiles flying up. 2 of them hit Sturges attached to her and kill them. The other one flies past and hits the Sturge that's still flying around and kills it. That's the one that she had wounded. She begins to climb down. It tears the Sturges off of herself and begins to climb down as more Sturges emerge and begin flying around the tower. And they can see them up above and down below. Eventually they calm down and settle back in, right? Okay, let's leave. "No," says Touchberry. "Let's not leave. Let's burn him out." He gets an oil flask and he prepares it with a bit of cloth in there and lights it up. And he drops back to throw. And I say, okay, just make an attack roll to see if you hit the doorway so you can get it through into the interior, right? All right. He drops back and he rolls a natural 1. As you drop back, you trip over a root that you didn't see there. You fall flat on your back. The throw goes straight up into the air. and lands on you. You're gonna take 6 points of fire damage. Ow! So of course, Touchberry gets up and he's trying to put it out, but it's gonna last 2 rounds. It's oil, it's burning, so he takes another round of damage before the fire goes out. And there he is, smoldering and smoking, fuming. Try again. He pulls out another flask of oil, lights it up. This time, he rolls the attack, he gets it. It doesn't, not by a lot, but he gets it through the opening, no problem. And it's not long before smoke begins to rise out of the tower, with sturges flying along with it. Some of them on fire, dropping back down in. Some of them just fly off and escape. So, all right. Vengeance taken. And a big old signal sent up into the sky. Here we are! The chances of a random encounter have just gone up. They've just gone up. But the dice don't want to play. I was hoping that by, causing all this attention and this big signal that all of a sudden all the monsters in the area would be on them, right? But no, nobody bothers them. I keep rolling, and it's like I'm getting 1s and 2s, right? I'm looking for 4s and 5s and 6s, but oh well. Nothing happens, and they continue. Later that day, as they come into the more mountainous areas, and they're skirting the edges of the mountains. They don't want to start climbing mountains randomly, right? They're looking for clues. They're looking for any evidence of life, of organized life, right? Intelligent life. As they go along, though, they find the entrance to a canyon that pierces the rocky face of this area. And there, at the foot of that canyon, which is 30, 40 feet wide, they see a trail, a clear trail. And in the dirt of that trail, footprints. Human? Goblin? Orc, maybe? All right, we found him. In we go. The canyon narrows as they go, further and further in, and it becomes more and more barren as the light can't seep in, so all that's growing are the most basic of plants that don't need much light at all, so ferns and whatnot. As they go further and further in, even those give way to bare rock, and eventually the ground in front of them rises, and they can see, higher up, the opening of a cave. I think we found him. I forgot to light the candle.